Senator from Iowa.
I ask that the calling of the quorum be suspended.
Without objection.
I want to address the Senate on the nomination for Michael Urbanski, U.S. District Judge, Western District, Virginia. Since we have returned from the April recess, we've done very little else other than consider judicial nominations. This will be the third judicial nominee to be confirmed in the last 3 days and the 23rd confirmed this year. In fact, after today, we will have confirmed 6 judges in just 8 days. Now, I know that the liberal interest groups have been pressuring the other side to consider more nominees, even though we've been moving at a very brisk pace this entire Congress. But it is surprising to me, with all the issues facing the nation at home and abroad, that we would spend 2 weeks on the floor considering little else. Our economy continues to struggle. Millions of Americans remain out of work and are unable to find jobs. The unemployment rate remains at approximately 9%. Those who do have jobs are finding it more and more difficult to get to work as gas prices are over $4 a gallon and inching even higher. Our nation is facing significant national security issues, and every single day our national debt continues to climb to unsustainable levels. These are incredibly important issues. I wouldn't go so far as to say that the majority doesn't care about the issues facing our nation. Perhaps they are simply out of ideas. But as Americans continue to struggle in this economy, it is difficult to understand why we would spend 2 weeks voting on hardly anything but judicial nominations. As I said, the Senate has been moving swiftly this year on those nominations. We've confirmed 23 nominees in just the 49 days. That is a rate of 1 judge almost every other day that the Senate's been in session since convening in January. However, the Senate must not place quantity confirmed over quality confirmed. These lifetime appointments are too important to the federal judiciary and the American people simply for the Senate to rubber stamp these nominations. So I was surprised during one of our recent debates to hear one of my colleagues on the committee come to the Senate floor and imply otherwise. During the debate on the confirmation of Edward Chen, a reference was made to what was characterized as the Senate's long-standing tradition, a deference to home state senators with regard to the federal district court nominations. That senator stated that at his time in the Senate, where a federal district court nominee is backed by the 2 home state senators, it is usually almost pro forma that the nominee is confirmed. Now, the fact is that home state senators do have a great deal to say in who should serve the country on the bench. That is part of the advice and consent process. But there are 100 voices in this body, and we speak for the American people who come before these jurists. We must ensure that they're fit to serve as impartial arbiters. I do not consider the confirmation process for a federal judicial nominee to be a pro forma process. I will continue to give careful scrutiny to all nominees, regardless of home state support. I do not consider it delay or obstruction to fulfill that duty. If the other side chooses to do so, of course, that's up to them. But I will not simply rubber stamp those nominees. We will continue to process the nominees fairly and with the standard the people rightly hold us to. I support today's nominee. Michael Francis Urbanski is nominated for U.S. District Judge, Western District, Virginia. He presently serves as a U.S. Magistrate Judge in the same district. Judge Urbanski received his B.A. with high honors from William & Mary in 1978 and his Juris Doctorate from University of Virginia School of Law in 1978. Upon graduation, he served as a law clerk to the Honorable James T. Turk of the U.S. District Court, Western District, Virginia. From 1982 to 2004, Judge Urbanski worked in private practice, first as an associate at the Washington, D.C. office of Vinson and Elkin, and then in the firms of Woods Rogers, where he became a principal in 1989. In 2003, the nominee was appointed to his present position. In 2010, Chief Judge James Jones appointed the nominee to chair an advisory committee on the new local rules adopted in the Western District. The American Bar Association Committee on the Federal Judiciary has given Judge Urbanski their highest rating, unanimously well qualified. I'm pleased to support this experienced nominee, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Mr. President,
The senator from West Virginia.
I ask consent to the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection. The question is on the nomination. Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka. Mr. Alexander. Ms. Ayotte. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bacchus. Mr. Begich. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper. Mr. Casey. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Coates. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Crapo. Mr. DeMint. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Enzi. Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Franken. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mrs. Hagan. Mr. Harkin. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Mr. Hoven. Mrs. Hutchison. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Inouye. Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Johans. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota. Mr. Kerry. Mr. Kirk. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Cole. Mr. Kyle. Ms. Landrieu. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson, Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Ms. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Akaka, Alexander, Ayotte, Barrasso, Blumenthal, Blunt, Bozeman, Cardin, Casey, Collins, Corker, Graham, Grassley, Harkin, Hatch, Inhofe, Inouye, Isaacson, Kyle, Lugar, Manchin, McCain, McConnell, Reed of Nevada, Risch, Roberts, Sanders, Session, Stabenow, Thune, Webb, Wicker. No senators voting in the negative. Ms. Murray. Mrs. Murray. Aye. Mr. Schumer. Mr. Schumer. Aye. Mr. Merkley. Mr. Merkley. Aye. Ms. Landrieu. Ms. Landrieu. Aye. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Aye. Ms. Mikulski. Ms. Mikulski, aye. Mr. DeMint. Mr. DeMint, aye. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, aye. Mr. Pryor. Mr. Pryor, aye. Mr. Tester. Mr. Tester, aye. Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul, aye. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, aye. Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown of Ohio, aye. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Mr. Rubio. Mr. Rubio, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, aye. Ms. Cantwell. Ms. Cantwell, aye. Mr. Cornyn. Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Udall. Mr. Udall of Colorado, aye. Mr. Coons. Mr. Coons, aye. Mrs. Boxer, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, aye. Mr. Kirk. Mr. Kirk, aye. Ms. Klobuchar. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Heller. Mr. Heller, aye. Mr. Bacchus. Mr. Bacchus, aye. Mr. Wyden. Mr. Wyden, aye. Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, aye. Mrs. Shaheen. Mrs. Shaheen, aye. Mr. Lieberman. Mr. Lieberman, aye. Mr. Rockefeller. Mr. Rockefeller, aye. Renzi. Mr. Renzi, aye. Mr. Toomey. Mr. Toomey, aye. Mr. Cole. Mr. Cole, aye. Mr. Franken. Mr. Franken, aye. Mr. Begich. Mr. Begich, aye. Mr. Johans. Mr. Johans, aye. Mr. Lee. Mr. Lee, aye. Mr. Portman. Mr. Portman, aye. Mr. Carper. Mr. Carper, aye. Nelson of Florida. Mr. Nelson of Florida, aye. Mr. Carey. Mr. Carey, aye. Ms. Snow. Ms. Snow, aye. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Bingaman, aye. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Lautenberg, aye. Mr. Chambliss. Mr. Chambliss, aye. Mr. Coburn. Mr. Coburn, aye. Mr. Shelby. Mr. Shelby, aye. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Durbin, aye. Mr. Moran. Mr. Moran, aye. Mr. Crapo. Mr. Crapo, aye. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Conrad, aye. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, aye. Ms. McCaskill. Ms. McCaskill, aye. Mr. Reed. Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, aye. Mr. Udall. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, aye. Mr. Levin. Mr. Levin, aye. Ms. Hagan. Mrs. Hagan, aye. Mr. Hoven. Mr. Hoven, aye. Ms. Feinstein. Mrs. Feinstein, aye. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Leahy. Aye.
Who wish to vote or change their vote? If not, the ayes are 94, the nays are 0, and the nomination is confirmed. Under the previous order, the motion to reconsider is considered made and laid upon the table. The President will be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate will resume legislative session.
Mr. President.
Senator from California.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to a period of morning business for debate only until 5 p.m., with senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
And, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that I may speak for up to 20 minutes, and then followed immediately after by Senator Isaacson as much time as he may wish to consume.
Without objection.
Mr. President, yesterday the Senate Ethics Committee voted unanimously to release the special counsel's report regarding the actions of former Senator John Ensign. The committee also voted unanimously to refer several findings to the Department of Justice and to the Federal Election Committee. Federal Election Commission, because we had reason to believe that Senator Ensign violated laws within their jurisdictions. I want to thank from the bottom of my heart the senators who participated in this investigation, many of whom are on the floor today. My vice chairman, the extraordinary leader, Senator Isaacson. And I say leader, I mean a leader on the committee, and I consider him to really be a co-chair with me. And Senator Roberts, who has been on this committee a long time, who has a sense of history and a sense of levity and pragmatism, and I really appreciated his cooperation. I want to note the participation of Sherrod Brown, who came on this committee and began this journey with us, and his very important contribution. Senator Risch, who brought with him a very strong legal slant on everything that we did and was very, very valuable. I want to thank him. And I want to say a special word of thanks to Senator Cardin, who sat in on this case because Senator Pryor felt he had too close a relationship with Senator Ensign and had to recuse himself. And Senator Cardin, we thank you so much for coming in and focusing on this case. And I just have to say that I am so grateful to how thoroughly and hard and collaboratively we all worked during this 22-month investigation. I say, and I mean, it was an honor to work with my colleagues. The Ethics Committee is unique. Its staff is nonpartisan and its actions are bipartisan. And that is so important, always, but particularly during these very polarized times. And also because this was such a long and difficult investigation for many reasons. I want to be clear about why the committee is releasing its report to the public and why Senator Isaacson and I are addressing the Senate today, and if any of our colleagues wish to add to our comments, I hope they will do so. While Senator Ensign's resignation ended our investigation before the next phase, which was the adjudicatory phase or the trial phase, it did not end our profound responsibilities to the United States Senate, to our laws, to our rules, to our Constitution, and of course to the American people. Article 1, Section 5, Clause 2 of the Constitution of the United States says that, quote, each House may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of two-thirds, expel a member, unquote. That's in the Constitution. Senate rules, those give the Ethics Committee responsibility to investigate alleged violations of laws and rules and, quote, improper conduct which may reflect upon the Senate. That's a quote from our rules. And finally, Ethics Committee rules make clear that whenever its members have, quote, reason to believe, unquote, that a violation of law has occurred, we, quote, shall, unquote, report it to the proper authorities. Let me say that again. Ethics Committee rules make it clear that whenever the members of the committee have reason to believe that a violation of law has occurred, we shall report it to the proper authorities. So we have a solemn responsibility indeed. It's actually a mandate to refer possible criminal or civil violations to the Department of Justice and to the Federal Election Commission, and that is what we have done today. We also have another responsibility, and that's to tell the American people when we believe laws and rules have been broken and that standards of conduct have been breached, and that is what we have done today. Our special counsel, Carol Elder Bruce, has written a report that speaks in great detail about her findings, and that report has been released today. These findings are so disturbing that she believed that had Senator Ensign not resigned, and had we been able to proceed to that adjudicatory phase, that the evidence of Senator Ensign's wrongdoing would have been substantial enough to warrant the consideration of expulsion, the harshest penalty available to the Ethics Committee and the Senate. And that is why, when former Senator Ensign resigned, the Vice Chairman and I put out a statement, and we said that he had made, quote, the appropriate decision, unquote. I want to give you the findings of the special counsel. 1, there is substantial credible evidence that Senator Ensign conspired to violate Doug Hampton's post-employment contact ban. 2, there is substantial credible evidence that Senator Ensign aided and abetted Mr. Hampton's violation of the post-employment contact ban. 3, there is substantial credible evidence that Senator Ensign made false and misleading statements to the Federal Election Commission regarding the $96,000 payment made to the Hamptons. 4, there is substantial credible evidence that the $96,000 payment to Mr. Hampton violated federal campaign finance laws. 5, there is substantial credible evidence that Senator Ensign violated a law and a Senate rule prohibiting unofficial office accounts. 6, there is substantial credible evidence that Senator Ensign permitted spoliation of documents and engaged in potential obstruction of justice. 7, there is substantial credible evidence that Senator Ensign discriminated on the basis of gender. 8, there is substantial credible evidence that Senator Ensign engaged in improper conduct reflecting on the Senate, including violating his own office policies, written in a manual. These 8 serious findings in the special counsel's report are the culmination of an extensive 22-month investigation and the basis for the committee's unanimous decision to refer this matter to the Department of Justice and the Federal Election Commission. As chair of the Senate Ethics Committee, I am proud to report to the Senate that our committee and its staff and special counsel have been fair and thorough. We deposed or interviewed 72 witnesses. We issued 32 subpoenas for documents. We reviewed more than 500,000 documents, including a large number that were initially withheld from the committee. And none of this would have been possible without the very hard work done by the staff of our committee, our personal offices, and I am so grateful to them. The special counsel, who was extraordinary, whom we all owe a debt of gratitude. And I particularly want to thank the staff director and the chief counsel of the Ethics Committee, John Sassaman, and his team. They were focused, and they searched for the truth, and we believe they found the truth. I also, again, want to personally thank our special counsel, Carol Elder Bruce, and her team. Our founders gave Congress the responsibility to ensure that its members behave ethically. We do this, the Ethics Committee tries to do this, by working to prevent violations of rules and laws when possible. We try to work with colleagues before they do something they shouldn't do. We try to train colleagues so that they understand what we mean when we say, don't bring any kind of shame upon the Senate. And then, if something bad happens, and we give a fair hearing, we might sanction them, and we do when necessary. Now, this isn't an easy task, but every member of the Ethics Committee is committed to fulfilling our critical responsibility in a thorough, fair, and a bipartisan fashion. When Senator Ensign resigned, he said, and I quote, "I have not violated any law, any rule, or a standard of conduct," unquote. I want to go on record as chairman of the Ethics Committee to say how strongly I disagree with that statement. Let's be clear. It was Senator Ensign's actions that led to the ethics complaint filed against him. It was Senator Ensign's action that led to a 22-month investigation by the Ethics Committee. And it was Senator Ensign's actions that led to the very serious findings and referrals in the report we are releasing to the public today. The committee believes that every senator should read this report very carefully. Let me say that again. The committee believes that every senator should read this report very carefully because it is a cautionary tale. It shows that our actions, all of them, have consequences for ourselves, for our families, for our staffs, for Congress, and for our nation. It shows that we must ensure that every action we take is within the law, the rules, and the appropriate standards of conduct. And in my view, if I could say my own personal view, it shows something else. And that is when you are in a position of trust and power, don't abuse it. Don't misuse it, because people can get hurt, very, very hurt. We cannot violate the laws or rules that we set for others, including our own staffs. We must always lead by example, not by words alone. This Ensign case was a sad chapter for the Senate, but a far sadder chapter for those whose lives were affected and destroyed by his actions. I want to thank the Senate for placing its trust in the Ethics Committee. And, Mr. President, with that, I would yield to the Vice Chairman of the committee, one that I consider my co-chairman, Senator Johnny Isaacs.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. President, on certain occasions in the life of a public